I don't normally like film trailers, but with inspired ones, I don't feel like you can really fight about that. And I'd like to say I like this one a little bit better. I ask you as we open to Hebrews tonight to go back to chapter 5, because the two previous chapters that we've studied, we're going to be in 7 tonight, but the two previous ones have advertised something to us, and I've briefly hit on it because of that, but I said we're going to save it, because we're going to have a chapter where we're really going to deep dive into this, and that's the case tonight. Chapter 5, toward the end of it, verse 9 says, "And having been perfected, he," referring to Jesus, "became the author of eternal salvation to all who obey him, called by God as high priest, according to the order of Melchizedek." I actually want to come back to chapter 5 right there where we're leaving off in just a moment. But first I want to point out to you where we left off, not last week, but the last time we were together in Hebrews class. In verse 19, we had his memory work, if I'm not mistaken. "This hope we have is an anchor of the soul, both sure and steadfast, and which enters the presence," talking about heaven, "behind, behind the veil, where the forerunner has entered for us, even Jesus, having become high priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek." 2 chapters, we've seen this in a row. Melchizedek. Now I want to go back to chapter 5. After mentioning the man Melchizedek, where we left off reading in verse 10, the writer states in verse 11, whomever he might be, "Of whom we have much to say, and hard to explain, since you have become dull of hearing." So it's not just that he's been brought up twice. It's been advertised to us, hey, we're going to talk about this guy a lot, but not right now. Hey, remember when I told you about Melchizedek? Not right now, but tonight it's right now. We get to actually start talking about him. So as we do so, I want us to ask this question: who exactly is Melchizedek? And understanding the theme of Hebrews, with Jesus, everything is better. What's the connection between these two? So starting with, who exactly is this person? Chapter 7, verse 1. I hope, I want to tell you up front, that we get this whole chapter covered tonight. I would be surprised if we do, but I hope we do. All right, that's my intention. We'll see how things go. I figure we'll probably have quite a bit of discussion on this, and that's okay if so. Verse number 1. "For this Melchizedek," okay, great. Who is he? We begin to get some more identification. "King of Salem, priest of the Most High God, who at some point met Abraham, returning from the slaughter of the kings, and blessed him." So let's pause right here just a little bit and let's talk about these names and descriptions that are provided to see if there'll be any help in identifying this one. Melchizedek, what does his name mean? Okay, you said Prince of Peace, Salem? Oh, that's interesting. So Melchizedek strictly means king, prince, commander, or lord. All of those work. And part of it has to do with it's a compound name meaning righteousness. And literally he's the king, prince, commander, or lord, pick your poison there, of righteousness. So he's a ruler of righteousness, number 1. That's what we know about him from his name. Secondly, he is the king, prince, commander, lord, or ruler over Salem. What's that place? It's not just too far up the road, right? No, that's a different one. A lot of Salems, even in the United States. Salem, Massachusetts, very famous. But it seems to be, now not everyone's on board with this. I personally am one who is. Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem has had many names through the millennia. Obviously, the Jerusalem, you have one that's very similar, Yerusalimu. I always thought that was kind of cute, Yerusalimu. Just good old-fashioned Salem is one of those, but there are about a handful, at least, of names that have been for this place, this municipality, throughout the years. So Salem means what? Peace. Jeru means city of. So it's the same thing, basically. But city of peace, or in its shortened form, it just means peace. Okay. So here's what we know about this guy so far. His name identifies him to be a king, prince, commander, lord, ruler of righteousness. And he's the ruler of Salem, an ancient name, it seems to me to be. Again, not everyone's in agreement about this. But for the city of Jerusalem, and it means peace, or city of peace. He's a ruler of peace, or prince of peace. And he's also a priest of the Most High God. Well, this guy does it all, doesn't he? So he is a priest. He is a king. My question would be, is he a prophet? I don't know about that one. But we do know that he's a priest, and he is a king. And this isn't like some kind of, silly pagan priest, but we're told he's priest of the Most High God of heaven. That's what we know so far. Then we're given a little bit of historical context. Lifespan, where are we looking here? Who met Abraham, returning from the slaughter of the kings, and we're told that he blessed him. Let's get on into verse 2 to see if we can figure out more of this. To whom also Abraham gave a 10th part of all. Old Testament, and even today in modern vernacular, more Old Testament, what's that called? When you give a 10th of everything. That's a tithe, okay? So, to whom Abraham gave a 10th part of all. And New Testament offering, as far as comparison goes, it's the same thing that we do today. We're not taught, specifically to tithe. Some people do that. Some do more, some do less, okay? That's a whole study all of itself that we could discuss. But I'm just saying for comparison purposes, as we give an offering to worship to God today, they would give their offering, and this would be called a tithe, right off the top. This would not be the fullness of all that a Jew would give throughout the course of a year, but this is just the right off the top of income. And so when this tithe is being given to God, it would seem, he gives it to this man, this ruler of righteousness, this prince of peace. Go ahead. Very true. Excellent. You're exactly right. That's fascinating, isn't it, how that works? It's in math and maybe chemistry as well, which is a lot of math. Kind of reminds me of the balancing of equations right there. It's in math, what you do to one side, you got to do the other, and to undo something, you do the opposite, and you see that here. So that's a good observation that you make, Roy. We're going to look more into that also. To whom also, verse 2, Abraham gave a 10th part of all, and now we're told, okay, we're on the right track with the definitions of these terms. There aren't a lot of times that the Bible really serves as a dictionary, but that's the case right here, and that's kind of neat. In case you're reading through and you don't have a Bible dictionary handy, Inspiration says, hey, when I told you that Melchizedek, yada, 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 that means king of righteousness. It's translated that way accurately. And then also, Salem, meaning king or ruler, as you put it, 100% accurate, prince of peace. Okay, let's pause right here if you don't mind. And I would like to go back to the Old Testament because we referred to Abraham. So let's talk about this predecessor of Jesus and see what kind of connection maybe could we find in this guy. Genesis chapter 14. So Genesis 12, the first 3 verses, we'll remind ourselves of it a little bit later on. We had that, of course, in our Bible study on Sunday also. That's where Abram is called. His name's not even Abraham yet. 75 years old, God calls him for the first time. That's where Abram's story really begins. And chapter 14, read along with me starting in verse 17. After that's Abram's return from the defeat of, this is a fun one, Kedorlaomer. That's probably not right, but I like to say it that way, so there. And the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom, went out to meet him, that is Abraham, at the valley of Shavah, that is the king's valley. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High. And he, that's Melchizedek, blessed him, Abram, and said, Blessed be Abram, by God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And Abram gave him a tenth of everything. And the king of Sodom said to Abram, okay, we'll stop there. That's all we need. But anyway, it's an interesting story. So this is what we know. Everything confirmed up to this point. What's the one new detail, though, that's brought into the conversation here about this interaction between Melchizedek and Abraham? Abram, still, if you'd prefer at the time. He brings out something. Seems like maybe to serve him. What? Oh, okay. So he brings out bread and wine to serve this devoted follower of God. That's interesting, huh? Okay. I want to read one other passage before we get back to our text. Psalm 110. Psalm 110. And from there, we're going to read the fourth verse. Psalm 110:4. The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. All right, so you want to know more about Melchizedek outside of Hebrews? There you go. That's everything we're told in all the Scripture. Old Testament. So you have, a couple of verses, Genesis 14, one verse where his name is brought up in the Psalms. Isn't this strange, though, that we get to the New Testament and specifically this letter of Hebrews, which really is all about connecting Old Testament to New, certainly to show the superiority of the New, but really a connection that's found between these two. And he advertises to us, the writer, multiple times, hey, I'm going to tell you about Melchizedek, but not right now. Hey, wait, we'll get to Melchizedek, but not right now. And he says, actually, when we do get to Melchizedek, though, I'm going to tell you a whole bunch of stuff about him. We don't even know anything about him from back really when he lived. Why does he want to talk about this guy who is almost non-existent as far as biblical writing goes? What's the theme of Hebrews? Okay, so we're looking at it from the standpoint of words of encouragement. Why is it so encouraging? Because what we have today, key word, is so much better. All right? And why is it so much better? Jesus makes it so much better. So why does he want to talk about Melchizedek so much when we're supposed to be focusing on Jesus, apparently? What do we know about Melchizedek so far? Number one, his name means, he's a priest? Good. Okay, we know about him right now. He's a priest. It would seem to be a high priest probably in this role that he's functioning as. A priest would appear to be a high priest. He's a king of righteousness. The title that's given to him means Prince of Peace. When offerings were made to God, they were given into his care to take care of. And one other thing, when he encounters this devoted servant of God, he gives to him, serves to him bread and wine. Pretty interesting stuff, isn't it, Roy? Very good. Yeah, I would agree with you, totally. Okay, let's continue reading down then. So we know more information about him, but man, not much, because he's only mentioned twice in the Old Testament, and the time when the most emphasis is given to him, it's like 2 verses. So there's not very much. This is where things start to get really interesting in verse 3. So we're still talking about this character, Melchizedek, the king of Salem. We're told he's without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but is made like the Son of God. And this part really gets to me. He remains a priest continually. He started being a priest back when, he continues to the present to be a priest. At the time of writing, Abraham lived 2,000 years ago. And we're told he's still serving as a priest today. All right, let's go back and sort through all of this. He has no father and no mother. What does that tell you about him? He has no genealogy. You can't trace from where he comes, which goes back to mom and dad. There's nothing there. Now this one especially, he has no beginning of days or end of life. So if we didn't get it at first or second, by third, we ought to have it by now. If you don't have any beginning or any end, what are you? Okay. Now my mind's blown, just so you know, okay? Yeah. And he never stopped serving as a high priest. I know we're not there just yet, but if you'll read in verse 23 of Hebrews 7, we're told, also there were many priests because they were prevented by death from continuing. So if you serve as a priest, what's the only thing that's going to stop you? Understanding your fidelity to God remains. The only thing that's going to stop you is your decease. But we're told about this one, back in verse 3, he, Melchizedek, remains a priest continually. He continues as priest. He doesn't stop being priest. Hasn't for 2,000 years and counting. And if the only way you stop as serving as priest is if you die and he continues as priest, what would that seem to suggest about him? He's not dead. He's still alive. Now that's really interesting stuff. Let me tell you two ways of looking at this passage and potentially interpreting this. From what I read about history, I've never lived as a Roman, and I'm okay with that. But from what I understand about ancient Roman society, is that at times a remark like this would be made that someone has no mom or no dad and no genealogy simply when you can't trace their line. There's no record of it. That's one way of interpreting it. Second way of interpreting it is, who might we be talking about when we encounter this shadowy figure of the Old Testament, who we know is a king of righteousness, a prince of peace, who receives tithes that are offered to God, and who blesses God's servants by handing out to them bread and wine to consume? A second possibility is that this is some pre-incarnate form, or for that matter, maybe some incarnate form, but maybe not through birth from what we're told, of Jesus, the Son of God. There are many times, and I want to go through an extensive study sometimes as a church together on this. We haven't done that here. I have elsewhere. Of all the times that it seems that Jesus appears in various forms throughout the Old Testament. Sometimes it seems that it's in the form of a human being. I'm not saying this is someone who's been born into the world, but it looks like someone, and it may very well be some kind of flesh that he takes on for just a short span to accomplish some task. There are other times, and we are going to have a study on this, where Jesus seems to appear in the form of inanimate objects in the Old Testament. That's fascinating to me. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I understand fully how all of this works, but what I will tell you is this, that our God is so strong and so smart, he has the power and the intelligence to accomplish anything he desires. I have no doubt about that. And I'm grateful that he doesn't require me as his follower to be nearly, not a fraction, as smart and as strong as he is, because I would never measure up. And I think you'd probably say the same thing about yourself. So I go back to verse 3 of our text and I say this: when the Bible says this guy Melchizedek has no father and no mother, no genealogy as to the beginning of his life, he has no beginning of days, and for that matter, no end of days, and that he remains 2,000 years later to serve as a priest, insinuating because he never died, I think it's very possible it literally means all of these things, and they're not to be understood figuratively. Now, that being said, I love all my brothers and sisters in Christ. And I know some brothers that would probably, not here by the way, but would be all up in arms as to the possibility of two interpretations here. I lean in the direction of, for two reasons I'll re-emphasize by the time we get to the end of this, I believe this is speaking of Jesus Christ himself. Now, that's my opinion. I know a lot of people don't. I do want to go through just a major potential objection to this interpretation. I want to be fair and look at this in all directions. So in verse 3, toward the end, it's stated that this one Melchizedek has been made like the Son of God. Well, we know who the Son of God is. That's Jesus. And if this person is made like him, well, that would seem to be as concrete as possible that it's not he himself, because how would you be like somebody yet not be that one? And that's a good argument, wouldn't you say? Let me show you why biblically I don't think it's a complete argument to go against the theory that this is actually referencing Jesus himself. Turn to Revelation chapter 1. Revelation 1. This is very fitting because we're actually making our way here. Our first textual portion of the study for Revelation, we gave the introduction to it last week, Sunday morning. It's actually not going to be all of chapter 1. I'm going to do something a little bit different with our first lesson in Revelation, but then we'll cover all of chapter 1 that following week. So I think this fits well to tie it in. Revelation 1, verse 10. The apostle writes, I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and I heard behind me a loud voice, like a trumpet, saying, write what you see in a book, and send it to the 7 churches, to Ephesus, and to Smyrna, and to Pergamum, and to Thyatira, and to Sardis, and to Philadelphia, and to Laodicea. Then I turned to see the voice that was speaking to me, and on turning I saw 7 golden lampstands. And he says, I see this one clothed with a long robe, and with a golden sash around his chest. The hairs of his head were white like wool, as white as snow. His eyes were like a flame of fire. And his feet were like burnished bronze, refined in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of many waters. In his right hand he held 7 stars. From his mouth came a sharp 2-edged sword, and his face was like the sun, shining in full strength. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. But he laid his right hand on me, saying, fear not, I am the first and the last, and the living one. I died, and behold, I am alive forevermore, and I have the keys of Hades and of death. So who's this one that John sees? Has there ever been any mistake about that from the standpoint of trying to interpret things properly from Christian students? And you might have noticed in verse 13, I skipped over a kind of important prepositional phrase there. John, as clear as day, knows this is a reference, or this is a vision that he perceives of Jesus, the Son of God. And yet, what does he say about him in verse 13? I saw one, what? Like the Son of Man. Son of Man is an unmistakable messianic prophecy. Unmistakably, Jesus is the fulfillment of all messianic prophecies. He is the Son of Man, and yet he sees, I see one like the Son of Man. This isn't the only place this happens in Scripture. Turn back to Daniel, the book that we just concluded on Sunday mornings in the adult setting. Daniel chapter 7. Verses 13 and 14, this is in the vision of the 4 beasts that he has. Daniel 7, starting in verse 13. I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there's one who comes to the Ancient of Days. We know him as God the Father. And was presented before him. And to him, this one that gets introduced to us from, understood, the Ancient of Days, or God the Father. To this one was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages to serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. Unmistakably, the prophecy of Jesus and the kingdom that he's going to establish. Oops, I did it again. Which prepositional phrase did I skip in verse 13? One, who is he? Like the Son of Man. An unmistakable reference to the Messiah. Jesus unmistakably is the fulfillment of all messianic prophecies, and yet he is referred to as one like the Son of Man. He is like it, and he is it. So I say that to say this, going back to the 7th chapter of Hebrews in our text tonight, in verse 3, when you're talking about one who's been made like the Son of God, we know biblically there are times when references are made to Jesus being like the Son of, in those cases, man, and he is the Son of Man. Therefore, it's not a proper argument that we could make to say because he's called like the Son of God, he can't be the Son of God, because we have at least 2 instances where that exact thing takes place. If you're wondering, that still doesn't make sense to me, though. So why would God do that? Have you ever been out hunting? It's getting dusky. Not like now. It's dark. Don't shoot. It's illegal at this point. Very illegal. Out of season, too. But if it were in season and, you can still see and it's technically light enough to shoot, and about 300 yards away across the field, in the edge of the woods, you see the unmistakable movement. And you get excited. Your heart starts pumping. And let's say you took your child, your grandchild with you to go out hunting, and you might say to him or her, "Hey, that looks like a deer." And about 5 minutes later, "Hey, that's a deer, that's a deer." And then you start going through the process. But wait a minute, you said that's like a deer out there. Well, if it's like it, it can't be it. Don't forget that a lot of these writers, especially Daniel, we've experienced, when he's giving prophecies about these incredible things, probably including some about this right here, and the vision, he's like, "Hey, that kind of looks like," and then later on only to find out that is that. Now, in the case of John, is it possible in the beginning, as he's narrating, like as he's seeing it, he's seeing someone who looks like the Son of Man? And could it be that by the time it's all done, or even looking backward on it, oh, I know that is the Son of Man? And it could be the same as this right here, that it's very possible that Abraham might not have understood with whom he was dealing and to whom he was speaking. But now we, after the fact, can look back and see. I can show you a number of instances in the Old Testament where people interacted with someone who later say, "I saw God face to face." But at the time, they think he's a man, just like everybody else. And that may be the very mentality that's being used here in the writing. Just in case you're wondering, well, why and how does that all fit together? Let's move on. We just concluded verse 3. Does that mean it's only that it's not recorded? It's possible, but all I know is this. The Bible says he has no father, no mother, no genealogy, no beginning of days, nor end of life, a.k.a. would seem to be eternal, and like the Son of God, remains a priest continually, starts serving as priest, and once he starts, he never quits. 2,000 years later, it sounds like he's still serving as high priest. All right, Roy, you want to get into this? Let's do it. Verse 4. "Now consider how great this man was," Melchizedek. And was there, by the way, is supplied by the translators. That could very well be, consider how great this man is, by implication. "To whom even the patriarch Abraham gave a tenth of the spoils." Now things are just getting a little stranger as we speak. Who do you know in the Bible that is praised as a mere human above someone, say, like Abraham? The Jews look back, just like we Christians look back. Sunday sermon. Abraham's fairly considered the father of our faith. That doesn't mean that we worship him or that he was perfect, but who in the Bible is greater than Abraham? Who do the Jews in particular? This guy, whoever it is writing to the Hebrews who are Jews. And you tell me, who would they consider to be in the flesh as greater than Abraham? Maybe. Now, I think they would be in the same conversation, don't you, those guys? I don't believe even they are going to be considered above Abraham. Everybody looks back to Abraham. Now, they do to Moses a lot. They do to David a lot, no question. Jacob? Okay, yeah, that's fair. Yes, sir. Enoch, okay. Okay, that's interesting, yeah. They would look up to him as well. Very strange, the privileged treatment he gets, isn't it, Jonathan? Compared to all others. So good. Yeah. That's been pretty good. Okay. And Judah, for that matter, himself. Sure, absolutely. Turn to John, the 8th chapter. I want to expose the Jewish mindset on this a little bit. At the time of writing of Hebrews, right around it anyway. 8th chapter of John. Let's start reading. We'll go in verse 51. Jesus talking with his Jewish brethren. John 8:51. Jesus speaking, "Truly, truly, I say to you, if anyone keeps my word, he will never see death." You don't have to die. The Jews said to him, "Now we know that you have a demon. Abraham died, as did the prophets." I'm going to say they probably would look at the prophets in a similar way. It sounds like that they would Abraham. I think they start where they do for good reason, though. Top of the line. Abraham, then there are other good guys too. But Abraham's dead, of all people. Yet you say, if anyone keeps my word, he will never taste death. Listen to this very pointed question. Are you greater than our father Abraham, who died? And the prophets died. Who do you make yourself out to be? We all know that Abraham's at the top of the pecking order of all human beings. And you, a human being, are you claiming yourself to be greater than Abraham? Listen to Jesus' answer. If I glorify myself, my glory is nothing. It is my Father, a.k.a. the Ancient of Days, who glorifies me, of whom you say, he is our God. But you have not known him. I know him. If I were to say that I do not know him, I would be a liar like you. But I do know him, and I kept his word. But specifically, you asked me a question about Abraham. Are you greater than our father Abraham? He says, your father Abraham rejoiced that he would see my day. He saw it and was glad. It almost sounds like Abraham was looking forward to him. In fact, the way Jesus words it almost sounds like Abraham looked up to him from beneath. So the Jews said to him, you are not yet 50 years old, and have you seen Abraham? Abraham lived about 2,000 years prior to this. Jesus said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, that is, before the record of his starting to be, his being born of a mother and a father, I am. At this point, they picked up stones to throw at him, but Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple. Why are they trying to kill Jesus after he utters in English 2 words, which in Greek are 1 word? Why 1 word to us, 2 words? Would they want to kill Jesus all of a sudden? Slightly. Okay, this puts him just a little bit above. Oh, actually, that's a lot above. I was way off then. Exactly. Exodus 3, when they say, Moses anticipates they're going to say, I don't even know what to say if they ask me who sent you. And he says, you all don't know me really well yet, but I am. Just tell them that. Tell them I am sent you. So when the Jews very pointedly asked this question of Jesus, you're bringing Abraham into the conversation. Actually, they did, but you almost like make yourself out with your words to be greater than Abraham. Are you greater than Abraham? And he says, look, Abraham was excited about everything pertaining to me. I can tell you that. And before Abraham was, that is before Abraham was created, I am. That's often defined as it's a present tense verb, but you'll see grammarians refer to this as what's intended to be a timeless present verb. And what they mean by that is its unending existence, not only forward, but also backward. And the idea of this is, I am eternal. I am the creator of all. I am the creator of all creation, including the one who was created, Abraham. I made Abraham, so yeah, I would say that's fair that I'm greater than he is. So you get back to the 7th chapter of Hebrews, verse 4. Think about how this kind of ties into our conversation. Now consider how great this man, this King of righteousness, this Prince of peace, who accepts tithes and who serves bread and wine to God's followers. Consider how great this man was, to whom even the patriarch Abraham, of all people, no one's greater than Abraham in the Jewish mind. He says, consider how great this man was. Even the patriarch Abraham gave him money in offering, 1/10 of the spoils from that war that was bravely fought. Verse 5, and indeed, those who are of the sons of Levi, who receive the priesthood, have a commandment to receive tithes from the people according to the law, that is, from their brethren, though they have come from the loins of Abraham. All right, I want to pause here for just a moment. Turn back to Exodus chapter 28. I appreciate what Roy stated a moment ago. I would like to incorporate that if you don't mind, sir. Verse 1 of Exodus 28. God's commandment to Moses as he's leading the Israelites. Then bring near to you Aaron your brother and his sons with him from among the people of Israel to serve me as priests. Aaron and Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. And we're not told just right here, we will be later, but from whom has Aaron descended? For that matter, Moses also. They're brothers. As far as the tribes, the 12 tribes, from whom had Aaron descended? Levi. And God says, hey, look, we're going to set up this arrangement. Don't forget, this is right around 1450 BC. The world's been around historically, biblically, for about 2,500 years at this point. This is new. And he says, of these descendants, the 12 tribes, eeny, meeny, miny, Levi. That's the one I want. These are going to serve as priests for me. But it's not all Levites that get to do so. Specifically, Moses, he's a Levite too, but he doesn't get to serve as priest. Specifically, through Aaron and his sons, there will be this descendancy of people who are going to serve for me as priests. So that's the way the priesthood works. 1450 BC, not for the first 2.5 millennia of the world's existence. Starting at 1450 BC on through the death of Christ, we're going to find that's the line of priests who serve at the tabernacle first and then later on the temple. So verse 5 of chapter 7 of Hebrews. And indeed those who are of the sons of Levi who receive the priesthood have a commandment to receive tithes from the people according to the law, like Melchizedek did, but he wasn't a descendant of Levi. He didn't have to be because that law wasn't yet in place. That is, from their brethren, though they have come from the loins of Abraham, meaning they're kind of like Abraham, and that they're descendants of his, but they pay their tithes to people who have descended through this Aaronic priesthood. Unlike Abraham himself did before the law was in place about 500 years prior, in paying his tithe to the Prince of Peace, the ruler of Jerusalem. Verse 6, but he whose genealogy is not derived from them received tithes from Abraham and blessed him who had the promises. So what does that mean here in the conversations of the greatness of Melchizedek? Verse 7, now beyond all contradiction, or there's no debate to be had about this. This is simple, common sense. The lesser is blessed by the better, or the greater. So we often talk about in our song service, one of our songs, praise God from whom all blessings flow. Ultimately, all blessings, spiritual, physical, emotional, any of it, Ultimately, it all comes from Him. He's the giver of all good gifts, directly or indirectly. Okay? So God is the blesser, for a lack of a better way of putting it. We are the blessee in this arrangement. What do we know about God compared to us? He's better, He's greater, He's stronger, more benevolent. Okay, we get the picture, right? He's everything that we're not. Okay, and I know we start well, but we make it flawed pretty quickly, don't we? So obviously God's the greater. We were just talking earlier about power and intelligence. Let's just start there. He's smarter. He's stronger. I've never seen him, but I'm confident he's better looking and he's more successful. All of those things compared to me. Let's think about this. He's the blesser. I'm the blessee. Therefore, we ought to know He's greater. And you think about that just in relation to God, and it makes sense. The one who's the blessee is lesser than the blesser. And that's described perfectly between the comparison of God and us. Beyond all contradiction, the lesser is blessed by the better, or depends more on the other. Verse 8, here mortal men receive tithes. So whether that's Melchizedek, maybe, but certainly the Aaronic priests under the law of Moses. Mortal men, that is, those who can die, receive tithes. Listen to this. But there, so if it's not the place of the mortal, where would there be? Here is the place of the mortal. There must be the place of what? The immortal. What do we call that place? The one who never dies. What place would that be? Would seem to be the afterlife, and in particular, heaven. But there, He, who we've been talking about all through here so far. He, who would the He be? But there, in the place of the immortal, or in heaven, Melchizedek receives, that's present tense. He still serves as priest and still receives them. Of whom it is witnessed that He lives, present tense verb, currently. So I just want to pause right here and tell you this. That's why, if this guy isn't Jesus, I don't know who is. The place, living in the place of the immortal in heaven, just as men on earth receive tithes, He's receiving offering in heaven, in that place. He's still alive, just like He was 2,000 years ago. Doing very well, mind you. Verse 9, even Levi, who receives tithes, paid tithes through Abraham, so to speak, for he was still in the loins of his father when Melchizedek met him. And so if you want to look at it from the standpoint of ancestry and very creatively, Levi was also paying tribute to someone so much greater than himself, the blesser. And as the blessee, even though he's still technically not going to be around for a few generations, he's still in the loins, awaiting the time that he's born of a mother and a father on the earth. I think this is probably a good place to stop. I'm not surprised that we only got to here. We will finish up chapter 7 the next time we get together. We had as our memory verse 14, so we got super close. But we're going to tie in these ideas of the Levitical priesthood, the change of that, and also tie back in the priesthood that existed before and that also exists today. Anyway, I hope you find this kind of interesting. I know, as I stated in the beginning, this is somewhat of a deep dive into something. It's really cool and unique too. And that how many times do you know that in the Old Testament we're told next to nothing about something or somebody, and then the New Testament just explodes in all this information that it gives? I do want to reiterate, I understand the textual possibility that this could be a reference to somebody else in the most perfect comparison of Jesus that's ever been made. For me personally, I don't get through all of it because there are about 3 details that just don't add up to me if it's somebody other than Jesus. But I want to leave it at this. If you think it's someone other than Jesus, please know that we're still brothers and sisters in Christ, doing the same thing, heading to the same place, okay? This is not something over which to contend. But I think it's absolutely fascinating. And to me, it makes perfect sense. If it is Jesus, why in this book that's all about Jesus now, he's made everything better, that for the first time of all of inspiration, we got to start talking a whole bunch about Melchizedek. It makes sense to me that this is one of the many manifestations of Jesus to his people in the Old Testament. Really neat stuff. All right, so I've talked a lot. Any comments that you want to make here at the end, or please no hard questions when it's time to go? Okay, all right, thanks. So for next time, just read the rest of chapter 7 or reread. Let's memorize verse 14 or rehash that. That's what we'll do next time. Thanks.